The iron gates of Spring Hill Academy gleamed beneath the morning sun, their polished edges catching light like a sword drawn but not yet swung. To most, it was just another start to another school year. But to Lina Morgan, standing quietly on the edge of the courtyard, this was a threshold far more formidable than anything she had faced before. She adjusted the straps of her worn backpack, the fabric fraying at the seams, a sharp contrast to the designer satchels slung over the shoulders of passing students. Laughter drifted through the air like perfume, familiar, confident, distant. Beside her, her mother reached out and gently fixed the collar of Lena's jacket. Dressed in white scrubs, the woman stood tall despite the early hour and the stares that met her simple uniform. Her voice was soft but steady. "Remember what your grandfather used to say, Lena. You don't bow to the room. You let the room bow to your presence." Lena nodded. She had heard those words countless times before. But today, they clung to her ribs like armor. Her grandfather, Master Harold Morgan, had been more than family. He had been a sanctuary, a lifelong martial artist who taught not just punches and stances, but a way of standing still in a world that tried to shake you loose. As her mother kissed her cheek and returned to their modest car, Lena turned toward the entrance and inhaled deeply. The building loomed ahead, stately brick walls, marble steps, and a stained glass crest that proclaimed honor, legacy, excellence. She stepped inside. The main hallway was as magnificent as she had feared. Arched ceilings, chandeliers, and gold-lettered plaques adorned the walls. But more imposing than the architecture were the eyes. Dozens of them, quick, sharp glances from behind phone screens. Whispers passed like static from one corner of the room to another. She didn't flinch, not outwardly. Her classroom, 2C, was filled with laughter and chatter until the teacher, a wiry woman in a pearl-button blouse, raised her voice. "Class, we have a new student joining us today." She beckoned Lena forward, placing a hand on her shoulder with the firmness of politeness. "This is Lina Morgan. She's come to us on a full academic scholarship. Let's give her a warm welcome." The smiles were tight. The applause scattered and obligatory. One boy in the back row let out an audible sigh and muttered, "Of course." The teacher didn't hear, but Lena did. She took her seat by the window and focused on the light breaking through the glass. Beside her, a girl leaned over with a smile too quick to be real. "I'm Rachel," she whispered. "If you need help finding the lunchroom later, just follow the scent of money." Lena smiled faintly but said nothing. By noon, she had been called on in every class, more than any other student. Each time, her answers were met with a mix of surprise and quiet tension. In world history, the teacher blinked twice before replying, "Well, that's not wrong." In literature, her analysis was met with a smile laced in condescension. Very articulate. In the cafeteria, she held her tray and scanned the tables. Most were already full or saved. One girl in a pristine tennis jacket looked her up and down and said, "Taken," without a glance at the empty chairs beside her. Lena eventually found a small table near the back and sat alone. She pulled out a dog-eared copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X. The words gave her spine. But even there in the quiet corner, she felt the eyes, watching, measuring. "Is this seat taken?" A boy's voice broke the silence. She looked up to see a lanky figure with glasses too large for his face and a lunchbox covered in comic stickers. "No, go ahead," she said. "I'm Miles," he offered. "You're Lena, right? Saw you in chem. Your answer about the Haber process kind of blew my mind." She looked at him, startled, then smiled for the first time all day. "Thanks," she said. He grinned. "Most kids here, they just pretend to be smart." Their conversation flowed with unexpected ease. Comics, history, childhood heroes. But when a trio walked past, two boys in varsity jackets and a girl with perfect posture and a sharper tongue, Miles went quiet. He looked down, lips pressed thin. "Who are they?" Lina asked. He hesitated. Connor Reed, Jade Monroe, and Tyler Barnes, royalty around here. Connor's dad owns half the school. Just be careful. Lina nodded once, the air around her cooling. She had known bullies before, but not like this. And yet, she didn't fear them. She had learned long ago that the most dangerous kind of strength was the one no one saw coming. For the next 2 weeks, Lina Morgan moved like breath through Spring Hill's pristine halls, present but not acknowledged. She submitted her assignments on time, answered when called, and kept her head down. And still the storm gathered. It began with small things, a whisper that wasn't quite under the breath, a nudge in the hallway that felt more intentional than careless, a marked assignment returned with the words unoriginal insight, even though it had been praised in her previous school's district competition. She said nothing, but she remembered everything. In chemistry, when her lab results were inexplicably missing and she was given a 0, she calmly resubmitted them with documentation. The teacher offered a thin-lipped smile. Always double-check next time, Lina. She smiled back. I always do. Her calmness annoyed them. At lunch, Miles became her refuge. They shared a quiet table by the far windows, always surrounded by the hum of conversations that hushed whenever they passed. He would slide over his sketchbook, illustrations of superheroes with layered stories, and she would nod with thoughtful admiration, offering tiny critiques. You should publish these, she told him once. Maybe one day, he said, then hesitated. If I survive this place. But that was the unspoken truth between them. Spring Hill didn't crush you all at once. It drained you quietly, smile by smile, step by step. The first public humiliation came on a Thursday. In gym, the students had been paired for basic grappling. Lina was left without a partner, again. Coach Dalton, a stocky man with a whistle that seemed a substitute for vocabulary, looked around and smirked. Reed, you're with Morgan. The class shifted, a rustle of anticipation. Connor Reed stepped forward, his eyes glinting with cruelty wrapped in charm. Don't worry, I'll be gentle, he said loudly, earning laughter from the boys and a smug hair toss from Jade. Lina simply nodded and stepped onto the mat. She knew how to fall. She had done it 100 times before. On wood, on sand, on her grandfather's old tatami mats. When the whistle blew, Connor lunged. She could have stopped him, twisted, redirected, but she didn't. Instead, she allowed the move, let his strength overwhelm, let her body hit the mat in a way that looked effortless, because it was. Pin, coach called, a little too satisfied. The class applauded. Connor lingered a second too long, his breath warm near her ear. Welcome to Spring Hill, scholarship girl. Later, as she wiped down the mat, she heard whispers. Maybe she's not as tough as people say. I thought she knew karate or something. Must be fake. But she didn't flinch, because her grandfather had once said, they'll mistake your silence for weakness. That's their mistake to make. That night, Lina returned home and sat at the kitchen table while her mother prepared stew. The apartment smelled of rosemary and quiet resilience. How was it today? Her mother asked. Lina stirred her tea. It's manageable. Her mother turned, looked her in the eye. You've used that word 5 times this week. Lina exhaled. They push, quietly, like paper cuts. One bang. Nothing big enough to report, but together, it bleeds. Her mother sat beside her, their elbows touching. When I started at the hospital, they called me the diversity win for 3 years. Not by my name, not by my skill, just by that. She didn't need to say more. Lina understood. That evening, while organizing the last of her unpacked boxes, Lina found it, a small bundle wrapped in deep blue cloth. Her grandfather's belt, faded black, the fabric soft from use. She held it in her hands and remembered his voice. True mastery isn't in the fight, Lina. It's in the decision not to fight until there is no other path. She tied the belt around her waist, not over her school clothes, but beneath them, close to the skin. Invisible. Not a weapon. A reminder. The next day, as she walked into the auditorium for the school's assembly, the whispers followed her like shadows. She kept her head high, her steps steady. Connor sat in the front row, grinning lazily. Jade looked back once, just long enough to make eye contact and smirk. But Lina didn't flinch, because strength wasn't in the glare. It was in the breath you didn't waste proving yourself. And as the principal welcomed students to another season of Spring Hill excellence, Lina whispered to herself, "Storms begin with silence." The warning came in a whisper. "Lina, have you seen it yet?" Miles approached her locker that Monday morning, shoulders tense, eyes flicking nervously toward the students passing by. He held his phone tightly, as if it might shatter in his hands. "Seen what?" Lina asked, her voice even, but cautious. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned the screen toward her. There it was, a video, captioned in bold, "Angry Lina compilation, Spring Hill's real threat." The footage was pieced together like a weapon, tiny fractured moments taken from weeks of hallway cameras and classroom phone recordings. Lina brushing past someone in the corridor, her jaw set tightly, a freeze frame of her eyes narrowed in gym class. A clip where her hand formed a fist after Connor's whisper during wrestling practice. Her silence cut and stitched into a narrative of aggression. I don't move like that," she murmured. "I know," Miles said, "but edited like this, it looks bad." The video had already spread. She felt it in the way the hallway quieted when she walked by. In the way, shoulders shifted just slightly away. Even teachers avoided her gaze that morning, as if afraid of whatever the pixels had suggested she might become. By noon, Ms. Lyman, the assistant principal, summoned her in the small office lined with posters about student leadership and constructive communication. Lina sat across from Principal Halberd and Miss Lyman. The principal folded his hands atop a printed transcript of the video's captions. Miss Morgan, being tone deliberate, "While we recognize that context is often complex, perception matters. Several students have expressed concern." "Concern about what?" Lina asked, her voice carefully measured. Ms. Lyman interjected, "About your demeanor. It appears you've been experiencing emotional challenges adjusting here." Lina blinked. "I haven't hurt anyone." "No one's suggesting that yet," Halbert said quickly, "but we are concerned about escalation." "You mean you're concerned about what I might do?" she replied. They didn't answer. That was answer enough. "You're welcome to take a few days to reset," Ms. Lyman offered, as if her suspension were a retreat. "Let the tension settle." "No," Lina said, "I won't be pushed out for something that isn't real." There was a pause. Then the principal leaned back with a C. "Think about your future, Miss Morgan. A few days now might save you a bigger fall later." That night, Lina returned to the dojo. The space was still silent, still covered in soft layers of dust. But to her, it felt like oxygen. She moved barefoot across the mats, each step returning her to herself. She began her forms, slow, precise, then faster, controlled, fluid, strike, block, breathe. In the quiet, her grandfather's words echoed like thunder. "The world will twist your stillness into threat. Let them, but never let them twist your center." After an hour, she collapsed to her knees in front of his photo. Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. Just breathe, just the weight of staying whole. The next morning, she found something in her locker. A folded note. No name, just 4 words. "Don't trust the system." Beneath it, scribbled initials. SH. Lina's heart kicked once. She recognized the handwriting. Sophie Hill, a former member of Jade's circle, quiet, observant, and recently absent from their usual lunch table. That afternoon, Lina spotted Sophie alone in the library, half hidden behind a stack of textbooks. Their eyes met briefly. Sophie looked away, but not fast enough. There was something unspoken in the glance, a flicker of guilt, of knowledge. That evening, as Lina trained alone in the dojo, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I have the real footage. They've been covering for Connor for years. If you want proof, meet me tomorrow at library, back corner, no phones. Lina read the message twice. Then again, something was unraveling, not just around her, but inside the very walls of Spring Hill. And for the first time since stepping onto its polished floors, she realized they weren't just afraid of her strength. They were afraid of the silence she had used to hide it. The library smelled of lemon polish and old pages. Too clean, too quiet. Lina stepped in and scanned the rows of bookshelves until her gaze landed on Sophie Hill, seated at the farthest corner, behind the encyclopedias no one touched anymore. No one else was nearby, just dust and tension. Sophie looked up. Her shoulders tightened but didn't rise. She motioned for Lina to sit. I wasn't sure you'd come, Sophie whispered, her voice fragile. I almost didn't, Lina replied. So what is this? Sophie hesitated, then slid a flash drive across the table. It used to help in the front office during my free period, she said, glancing around nervously. One day I saw how they edited a disciplinary report. It was about a student who had accused Connor Reed of threatening him last year. But the report completely changed. Lina frowned. They erased it? Worse, they rewrote it, made it look like the other kid was at fault. He left the school 2 weeks later. Quietly. Sophie's voice broke. And that wasn't the first time. What's on the drive? Unedited security footage, she said. From the last few weeks, it shows everything, the moments they used in that video against you, but with the full context. You weren't aggressive. You were reacting. Lina stared at the small piece of plastic. You could have ignored this. I tried, Sophie whispered, but then I saw you, just walking through the halls like it didn't hurt, like none of it could touch you, and I realized, it was touching me. Lina pocketed the drive. You did the right thing. I hope so, Sophie murmured. Back home, Lina and Miles stayed late in the school's computer lab. They plugged in the flash drive. Footage loaded, grainy but clear. In one video, Connor bumped into her on purpose, causing her to stumble. In another, Jade Monroe was captured whispering something cruel right before Lina's expression tightened, a context that had been completely omitted from the viral clip. They stitched together the real story, scene by scene. By the end, Miles sat back, exhaling. They're going to hate this. They already do, Lina said. Might as well give them a reason. They composed an email, short, direct, professional. To Ms. Lyman, Principal Halberd, Spring Hill. Disciplinary review. Subject, clarification regarding recent video. Attached, security footage. Archive sent. The next day, no one said a word. It was too quiet. The usual mocking glances were replaced with neutral stares, as if everyone was waiting. By the third period, nothing had happened. And by lunch, Lina's email was gone, deleted from her sent folder, vanished. She stood in front of the counselor's office, flash drive in hand. When she asked about the message, Miss Porter blinked slowly. What email are you referring to? I sent it yesterday. I didn't receive anything from you, she said, a little too quickly. Something in Lina's stomach coiled. Then came the setup. She was leaving the cafeteria with Miles when Connor stepped directly into her path, flanked by 2 other lacrosse players. A crowd began to form with the instinctual precision of those sensing spectacle. You've got a bad attitude, Morgan, Connor said, loud enough for all to hear. You walk around here like you own something. I'm trying to get to class. Not before we're done talking. And before she could step aside, his hand grabbed her collar, yanking her forward. Too close, too fast. Phones rose. Faces watched. Teachers vanished. It was as if the world inhaled. And Lina remembered. She remembered every quiet dojo night, every bruised wrist she'd iced at 5 years old, every whisper from her grandfather. When the moment comes, do not hesitate. End it quickly, then walk away. In one fluid movement, she twisted Connor's wrist, broke his grip, swept his legs, and pinned him to the polished floor. It was precise, controlled, not a moment more than necessary. Gasps filled the hallway, the sound of a stunned body meeting tile, then silence. Connor lay on his back, face crimson with rage and shock. She didn't look down at him. She turned and walked to class. By the time the final bell rang, the takedown had already been posted. No edits, no distortions, just 3 clear moves. And a caption, "Scholarship girl drops Spring Hill's king in 10 seconds." That night, Lina returned home to find her mother waiting at the kitchen table, holding her phone. "We've been summoned," she said quietly. "Disciplinary hearing. Tomorrow." Ama. Lina sat down across from her. The storm had finally arrived, but so had the truth. And for once, everyone saw it. The air in the disciplinary hearing room was heavy, polished wood, unsmiling faces, and legal pads that smelled of decisions already made. Lina Morgan sat between her mother and Ms. Tasha Green, a calm, sharp-eyed attorney who wore her confidence like armor. Across the table, Principal Halberd, Ms. Lyman, and 3 school board members sat in judgment. At the end of the long table, Mr. Reed, Connor's father, crossed his legs slowly, radiating entitlement. Connor sat beside him, arm in a sling, a performance. Dr. Keller, head of the board, spoke first. "This is a formal review of the incident involving students Connor Reed and Lina Morgan. The board will determine whether Miss Morgan poses a threat to campus safety." Ms. Green rose calmly. "Before my client speaks, I'd like to submit new evidence." She handed over a flash drive. "It contains unedited security footage from multiple angles. I urge the board to watch it in full before continuing." The room dimmed. The video played. There was no ambiguity. It showed Connor stepping in front of Lina, showed him grabbing her collar, showed her taking exactly 3 precise, restrained movements to break free and neutralize the threat. No more, no less. When the lights returned, no one spoke immediately. Even Principal Halbert's expression had shifted from smug to unsettled. Miss Green's voice was clear. "What you just saw is textbook self-defense, delivered by a student trained not just in martial arts, but in emotional restraint. Miss Morgan did what your policies failed to do. She protected herself." Mr. Reed scoffed. "She could have broken his bones. This was an overreaction." "My client didn't break bones," Ms. Green replied. "She broke your illusion of control." Lina's mother stood. "My daughter has endured months of harassment. Teachers ignored it. Administrators erased it. And now, when she finally defends herself, you call her dangerous?" Ms. Lyman shifted. "We didn't see everything." "No," Lina said, standing. Her voice, for once, was not calm. "You refused to." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of black cloth, her grandfather's belt. "I've worn this under my uniform every day, not as a threat, but as a vow. My grandfather taught me never to fight unless I had no other choice. I waited. I endured. I gave this school every chance to protect me. It didn't." She paused. "And I'm done apologizing for surviving." There was silence. Then Dr. Keller cleared her throat. "The board will reconvene and deliver its decision by tomorrow morning." As Lina turned to leave, Mr. Reed called out, "You think this changes anything? My son will still graduate, still inherit everything. This moment will pass." Lina didn't look back. It will, she said, but the truth won't. By noon the next day, the board's decision was public. Lina Morgan would not be suspended. Connor Reed was placed on indefinite leave. The footage had gone viral overnight. National news outlets picked up the story. Hashtags like "had justice for Lina" and "strength with control" trended across platforms. Principal Halberd resigned a week later. Miss Lyman quietly followed. The school announced the creation of an independent ethics committee. In Lina, she returned to class with her head higher than ever. Students who had once ignored her now nodded with quiet respect. Some offered apologies, others silence. But this time it was the silence of acknowledgement, not exclusion. At the dojo, her Saturday classes doubled in size. Miles helped teach. Sophie began a podcast interviewing students affected by institutional silence. And in a small frame on the dojo wall, beside her grandfather's portrait, Lina placed a single printed sentence. "I didn't come to fight, but I came prepared." Message, moral of the story, true strength isn't in how loud you fight. It's in how long you endure and how wisely you choose to act and how fearlessly you stand when truth finally speaks.